Well, what an extraordinary set of very different projects, which I suppose just shows that this category of carbon and climate and energy covers such a broad range of things that in some ways it's quite difficult to make comparisons. But I think the first thing to say is that all of them are transformative, either about a situation or how we think about situations in the future. And I wonder whether each of you would like to say that as a result of the work that you've done on this particular project, whether it's changed the attitude to what you would do in the case of the water tower or the airport, if you were doing something new, a brand new project, and in the case of Hong Kong, what happens if you're retrofitting a building where it's probably not possible to, or maybe it is, take it apart to install the things that you've been able to do looking at a building from scratch. Let's start with the water towers.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Paul. And I really enjoyed to be in a company with very great projects. I think, as you mentioned, maybe the learning lesson that we can have for this certain projects, it could be easily applied when we start projects from scratch, and we shouldn't repeat the mistakes of the past. Because I always say that we as architects have this kind of dual code in the practice, and our cities especially. Either we can create more mistakes or we'll be aware. And I think now there is no time for mistakes, like, to repeat, but there is no, we don't have this luxury. So I think the forward thinking when we have a project from the start, not thinking the sustainability as something comes after thought, it should be in the heart of in the design process from the beginning.
Thank you. And how about lessons from the airport?
I think there's three things we really learned from Millenicon that we can apply to all projects. The first one is that humans have really only been building high carbon buildings, landscapes, design for the last 6 generations or so. This is a relatively new construct. We only have about 1 generation to undo all of that thinking about how we build, how we construct. And it can be done. There are incredible examples throughout history that we can reference in that work. I think the second thing we learned related to that is that aesthetics are dynamic. Aesthetics are kind of a cultural construct of the time. They reflect social, political, power issues. And early on in the process, we had to educate our clients about thinking differently about aesthetics. How reused concrete could actually be beautiful. It could replace marble or limestone and could be thought of differently. And that was a process, but when they understood the benefits and the impact of that, it was huge. And I think the third was developing a carbon calculator through the project where one didn't exist before, was really transformative in that not only do we now use it on all of our projects, and it incorporates data from Tally and Pathfinder and all these other data sets that are out there, but by making that available and free for everyone to use throughout the profession, hopefully one project, one practice can help shift the needle for the entire profession. And that to us is a humbling way of giving back to all of our collaborators, everybody that we are influenced by, everyone that we respect throughout this industry.
And I suppose just as a preamble on Hong Kong, I mean, you might say, well, why build the building at all? But the client here, or a partner, was the Hong Kong Green Building Council. So the assumption is, well, somebody is going to keep building these buildings. So the question is, can you make them virtuous rather than malign?
Yeah, I think that's exactly a point, and I think it's applicable, this approach, also to retrofit projects, because the first step is to really think about this building in a different way, and that generates a cascade of solutions that we're going to implement. Of course, this is a new build, so we could put all the systems we wanted. So in fact, as I said, we have more than 40 systems to reach net zero achievement and go beyond. But you don't necessarily need to use all of those systems. You could use half of them, and you'll be in a much better place than you are with existing buildings, possibly.
If you were retrofitting, let's say, a similar scale tower in Hong Kong or many other Asian cities, how fine a line is it between saying, well, actually, it would make more sense to knock it down and do one of our energy generators that you've described, and how much do you have to take into account, the embodied energy and the loss? Is that a relatively easy calculation to make? I mean, maybe it is using the carbon calculator, but, from an ARUP point of view, I mean, you've got plenty of measurement tools.
I think that's really the first question when we approach a certain type of project, is to make sure that it's actually virtuous to keep the existing building. Because sometimes we struggle so much to, reuse an existing building that the gain is really little, possibly, right? So it's important to have experience and to know how to approach this calculation. I mean, sometimes it's also a matter of common sense. Depending on what you want to achieve, how much can you reuse of an existing building?
There's one very obvious theme which applied to all of your buildings, is the extent to which nature and the expression of nature has informed the outcome. Let's run along the line the other way. Let's start with ARUP. Now, your green ribbon, you look at that, and I think some cynical people might say, well, that's a geometrical shape, and actually, given all those tubes that they're using, did they really need the greenery? Is that an aesthetic thing? I think you were saying that there were specific functional purposes for that ribbon.
Yeah, I mean, the ribbon has several functions. It has a function for the people working in the office, so it makes the office a different type of space, and that's one thing that we want to bring also with this project, is the way we use office building has changed dramatically, especially in the last 5 years, I would say. So we need to think about office in a different way. It's also a connective space, but it's also a space where we can grow different type of local greenery. So that's actually the main use for the green ribbon, and of course connecting all the building.
In the case of the airport, I mean, the whole raison d'etre of the project really was to make a green space which hadn't existed before. Well, not only hadn't existed recently because of the airport, but actually had never existed for those communities around there. How did you go about? Did you have to consult them about what sort of part they wanted, or was there just general approval for the idea?
As part of the overall project, it was required to have 50% of the entire land area be green space. And so that could have been done in a very piecemeal way that followed kind of the traditions of Athens, of pocket parks or green streets or things like that. Or it could be a bold gesture for a massive park. And our client, Lambda, really wanted to do something that would give back to the larger city, not just create value for kind of individual neighborhoods or development clusters within the site. So they really saw this as a destination park that would serve all citizens and linked it with transit. And I think that was the genesis of why it needed to be concentrated. And they also saw the value in creating a concentrated landscape, too, in terms of increasing biodiversity, using it for nature-based solutions and green infrastructure. Harder to do when you have kind of piecemeal landscapes than one larger connected system.
And finally, back to the water towers, a couple of extraordinary images of what these things would look like, kind of informed by nature and expressing it simultaneously. How much of that was in the thing? How much was the appearance in the thinking of when you were doing the design, or did you kind of work out what you wanted to do and then you realized that actually that is how it might look?
Yeah. Thank you for this, because actually I have one of the slides called learning from informality. And it's really important when you design something, it's also sometimes you get the surprise how it looks at the end. We work with what we have already, because the water towers, it's a very beautiful structure by itself, but it was only for one mono use, is to preserve the water and to accommodate the pressure and go. And this could be found in many places. This was the typical shape. So the building is already there as a structure, and the footprint occupied for this building, it's already there. So despite the shape at the end, I think it wasn't the intention to have a beautiful shape, but the purpose and the cause, it was really intended to be. And I would say we were really happy that when we did this, after winning the WAFX, a lot of the national media in Egypt wrote a lot about the project, and contractors already started to approach me to get it built. So, and this is really important, how we can start from a theoretical idea and you really find someone interested to get it done.
Well, that's really a great note to end on. A very positive message. Can I thank all the speakers on your behalf and invite you to receive your awards?
Thank you so much. Thank you.